Welcome to Oak City Church, a family of learners, lovers, and givers sent. For more information, visit us online at oakcitychurch.com. Let us know if we can help you in any way. Thank you for listening.
Today's scripture comes from Mark 7, verses 24 through 30. And from there he arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And he entered a house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him, and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." And he said to her, "For this statement you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter." And she went home and found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. This is the word of the Lord.
Good morning. Glad you're here this morning. If you're online with us, we're glad that you've tuned in. And if you're visiting, we'd love to talk with you and answer any questions that you might have. Just catch me or anybody you've seen up here after the service. Let me start this. We're back in a series in the Gospel of Mark, and we've been out of that for a month or so, and we'll be back in it, and we'll take a little bit off for Christmas, and then we'll finish Mark after the New Year. But let me start in a little bit different place. How many of you felt like you were insulted at some point this week or disrespected at some point this week? Anybody got a good story that you can share? Because I do. You do? Parenting. That was my next line. How many of you have felt that way because of somebody else that's in this building right now? So I was driving this week. I was at Lowe's. I live up northeast of town, so the Lowe's on Capitol. I was driving back to my house off of Buffalo Road, and I had to go to Lidl to get something to eat. So I had something for dinner, and so I was driving down, I think it's New Hope Road, and there was some construction. So it went from 2 lanes to 1 lane, 4 lanes, 2 lanes each way. And so I was already in the lane that I was supposed to be in. But I do kind of get into the lane you're supposed to be in early. How many of you get in the lane you're supposed to be in early? This is going to be good. How many of you get in the lane you're supposed to be in a little bit later? Oh, wow. How many of you get in that lane at the very last second? Okay, you guys are in the right place because you need to talk with the Lord about that before you take communion today because that's a problem. That might have been a little too far. So I just happen to be in that lane, and there's not a lot of notice. We're not on the highway. It's not a mile, whatever. And so people are kind of up at the end. But then when you're up where it actually merges, you go like 1 car in, 1 car forward, 1 car in, right? Well, not this guy. He's thinking 2 cars in, and then me. And I'm not even thinking someone's going to do this, so I leave him enough space to do that. And then I just lean on my horn, and not like a beep beep lean on my horn, but like 3 minutes on my horn. I'm just kidding. But it wasn't 3 minutes. But all my righteous indignation for the week or the month came through that horn, in that moment. And I could tell that it worked, and he took it to heart. When we pulled into Lidl at the same time. I'm like, oh, this dude is in front of me. I don't know if he knew that I was still behind him, and I just stayed in my car for a minute. I had said my piece. I was not going to get into it about this. It actually happened again on Friday morning or afternoon. We went to Roanoke to see our oldest son, Michael, and we're up north of Greensboro, and I'm in the left lane. This guy rolls up behind me, and I didn't kind of see him. He's going fast, and then I'm like, oh, I got to get over. But we moved over at the same time. He moved over to pass. I moved over to let him pass, and then I think I moved back over, and then I moved over, and then he pulls up beside me like to pass. I'm like, that's cool, and he honks. I'm like, oh, here we go, and it was Josh and Lauren. I'm like, how do I see these people here? But my point is, like that little one, I was mad about something else, and my righteous indignation came out Like in that moment, because I feel like we're always insulted. We always have some level of insult, and road rage is where it can come out because you don't typically pull into the same grocery store with a person and have to face them face to face, you know. But we're kind of in this, and this deals with this passage because I feel like we're kind of obsessed with our rights, and so we're always like on edge about somebody insulting us. I thought early this week about songs that, like anthems we have that get into that. So if I said, we got to fight for our right to party, right? If I said, hey, teacher, leave those kids alone. We don't need no thought control. Is that what it is? We don't need no mind control. I thought about the scene from Meet the Parents, Ben Stiller on the airplane. Like, all I want to do is what I want to do, and what I want to do right now is hold on to this bag. You know, like, stop telling me where to put my bag. In, like, huge, serious ways, right? I woke up this morning, I was check like, a news app, and so I didn't really need to, but there was a shooting at Southport last night, which is crazy. You know, and so gun rights is this. It's about it's our individual rights versus collective good. And I'm not making a comment on that. I'm just saying, like, this is prominent. The whole vaccine conversation right now is about, like, what can the government tell us to put in our body? The abortion debate is about individual rights. The key question being, what is an individual and whose rights matter most? And that's like a whole thing, but it's about our rights. LGBT issues are about rights. We got it all over the place. We got there honest as a country. This is how we started, right? You recognize that flag? This was the Continental Marines flag in 1775, and so you know what our symbol, national symbol, is an eagle. You know what Ben Franklin wanted it to be? That's what I thought, and I read this week. Originally, he wanted it to be a rattlesnake. Now, I hate snakes, but that would have been pretty awesome if our national mascot was a rattlesnake, you know? He said they represent vigilance, self-preservation, and the ability to remain independent yet united. I thought there must be something about rattlesnakes that I don't know. But then I thought we do kind of resemble rattlesnakes right now as a nation, like rattling, like, leave me alone, you know? Don't mess with me. But we were the people from Europe that were sick and tired of being told what to do, so we came to America. If you think about this, like, those people were like, I don't care if I have to hunt for every ounce of food. I don't care if there's no houses, I got to build it, or roads, or cities, or I might die at any moment, so long as I don't have to be told what to do anymore. That's America. Like, that's where we came from, right? And it's good. It's the result of the reality that we are made in the image of God. We have inherent dignity and inherent rights, and God is just, and justice is real, and we're all entitled to it. But that was meant to be paired with, there is a right giver who is our ultimate authority, and so we submit to that authority and that authority alone, and we're losing that, and what we're left with is all these rights, you know, and a bunch of people with all their rights that are insulted all the time because someone is violating their rights in like big ways, but in little ways, like getting cut off in traffic. We talk a lot about people feeling that people are too entitled. We talk about equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity. These are debates, and we take it. Then in just real ridiculous ways, we take it too far. We scream at the refs at our kids' games. How many of you screamed at a ref this week? Yes. My brother-in-law, Bobby Joe's brother, runs a soccer club in Oregon, and he told her the other week that they tried to have a silent weekend. Has anybody done this? Their club done this? Where it's like you don't make any noise on the sidelines? Apparently our soccer club did this, and I just missed the memo on it. Because she's like, yeah, we did that. I'm like, oh. So he tried to do that where the parents can't make any noise, and the parents accused him of violating their rights of free speech. That is how they termed it. That is where we are, you know. And on a more personal level, we get mad when somebody doesn't put their dishes in the dishwasher, or some of us might. do that. It can be something where you feel like you're carrying too much of the load. Okay, all of that, because I think you can just skip through this passage and miss the central tension in the passage, because what he does here is pretty amazing for Jesus. This lady comes to him. She has a little daughter who is oppressed by a demon. That is a serious deal, serious condition. She asks Jesus for help, and he says, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." He calls her a dog. You will not find this line on a plaque at Lifeway, right? No one is making a meme of this verse and throwing it on Instagram. So that's my Jesus right there. This is like a world-class insult. A couple weeks ago when I was just starting on this passage, I thought, I didn't know Jesus was a New Yorker. I didn't know he had that in his bag. I'm Midwest nice, like that's where I'm from. We're in Southern hospitality. This is neither of those things. That is a slur that Jews would use against Gentiles. And for the record, we are the dogs, right? Most of us in this room are Gentiles. We're the Gentiles. And she doesn't lean on her horn. She doesn't call her lawyer. She doesn't even grumble. She agrees with them. Like that's the key to understanding this passage, is why Jesus would do it and why she would take it the way that she did. And so let me get into this and get to that part of the passage. So from there he arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon. He entered a house, didn't want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. For the record, I don't know how he enters a house, how Jesus doesn't want people to know but could not be hidden. Seems like if he's Jesus, he could do that, but I didn't find a good answer for that. The last passage that we're in was he's around the Sea of Galilee doing some teaching. His last little bit was an argument with the Pharisees where his disciples did not properly wash their hands before taking a meal. And so the Pharisees are like, why don't your disciples do the right thing and wash their hands before they take a meal? And Jesus says, you guys are totally missing the point. And tells them, like, it's not about how you wash your hands and what goes into you. It's what comes out of you that reveals who you are, and that's your real problem. That's what defiles you. So in that passage, he said, are you without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into a person from the outside cannot defile him, since it enters not his heart but his stomach, and then it's expelled? And this little parenthetical is important. Thus he declared all foods clean. Because for Jews, there were clean and unclean foods, and he's saying it's all clean. That's not the point. I'm going to tell you what the point is. Because in this passage with this Gentile woman, in a way, he is declaring all people clean or cleanable, let's say. And if we're Bible geeks, this is a parallel to the book of Acts, where Peter has a vision of a sheet coming down and all foods are clean. And then in the next scene, he meets Cornelius, who's a Gentile, and he receives the Holy Spirit, and all people are clean. And so this is kind of a precursor to that. And then he said, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. From within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, and theft, and murder, and adultery, and coveting, and wickedness, and deceit, and sensuality, and envy, and slander, and pride, and foolishness. All of these evil things come from within, and they are what defiles a person. And the Pharisees could not handle it. Like, they knew it was an insult, and they took it as an insult, and they were, in a word, triggered by what Jesus said to him. So he leaves. He arose from there, went to the region of Tyre and Sidon. This is the one time in his ministry where he goes outside of Israel, and it's probably because he wants to get away from these guys. Enters the house, doesn't want anyone to know. Tyre is modern-day Lebanon. It's ancient Phoenicia, and historically, one of the Israelis' greatest enemies. Their historian Josephus wrote they were notoriously our bitterest enemies. During the Maccabean revolt, like just before Jesus, the people from Tyre fought with the Seleucids against the Israelis. So like there is no love lost between these peoples. If you want to understand what the Middle East was like then, look at what the Middle East is like now. And that's what it's like. Like these people just historically have hated each other, which adds to the tension in the scene of this woman approaching Jesus asking for help and how he responds to her. Immediately, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. So she's desperate. Her daughter is severely oppressed. That's how Matthew puts it. In another story, that involves like the spirit throwing the child into convulsions, foaming at the mouth, throwing him into the fire. And so this is a life-threatening condition. There's something really clarifying about a situation where it's either physically debilitating or could lead to death, and multiply that when it's a child. So a couple weeks ago, I talked about having a couple heart surgeries, and that being clarifying for me. But if that was my child, it would have clarified things on a magnitude greater. Like I, at that time when all that happened, was thankful that it was me and not my children that went through that. And so when your child goes through this, there was I was watching the NC State game last night, which was it was bad, but they said, before the game, that the defensive coordinator wouldn't be on the sideline because his 18-year-old daughter, who had been battling cancer for a few years, had passed away. And who cares about the NC State game, right? Like, it just does not matter. I don't know how they played the game. When someone they're this close to loses someone, I mean, they all, it's just this clarifying. And that's where this lady is, and she is desperate. I thought about this passage from Ecclesiastes. It's better to go to the house of mourning than the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay this to heart. There's just something about those situations that puts everything back into focus. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. Priorities tend to straighten themselves out. Our pride tends to not be very important. Cut me off on my way to Lidl, make a bad call in my kid's game, don't put your dishes in the dishwasher. Who cares when you're facing like a desperate reality, which might be when you're facing reality, because there are parts of reality that are always desperate. So immediately, this woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him, came down, fell at his feet. She dropped everything, found Jesus, and fell down before him. I don't know what this is for us metaphorically. If it's like I watched all this guy's YouTube videos and I traveled across the country to find him. We had a woman here, single mom years ago, who had a son who was pretty severely autistic and struggling. And there was a place, I forget, somewhere in the middle of the country where she could get him help. She sold everything and dropped her whole life, drove across the country because she thought this could help her son. This is this woman. Now, the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. The last person to fall down at Jesus' feet was Jairus, who also had a little daughter who was ill, and that's a purposeful parallel, So they fall down at the feet, but they are like just total opposites. He was a man, she was a woman. That mattered more in their culture than it does in our culture. He was a Jewish person, she was a Gentile, she was not a Jewish person. Matthew calls her a Canaanite. The people from Tyre were notorious pagans, not just pagans, but worshipped idols, and were proud of it, like notorious pagans. One commentator said that this verse is a crescendo of demerit, like just saying how unlikely this woman was to get help from Jesus. And as a Jewish miracle worker, he had every reason not to help her. And then he says, let the children be fed first, for it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. That's just a hard line. This is one of many verses in the Bible where the term dog is used as a slur from Philippians. Look out for the dogs, the evildoers, those who mutilate the flesh. There's a little bit of an edge taken off of it because there's two words for dog in the Greek. Is there a way to, like, in Spanish, if you put a cito after it, it makes it diminutive? Do I have that right? What would be an example of that? Jeffrey Cito, little Jeffrey. Didn't expect a short joke today, but that was pretty. I'm going to give it to you. That was pretty good. Way to go. So there's like dog and dogacito, like little dog, which could be like a puppy. Like maybe there was some version of a house dog that would be sitting underneath the table waiting for the crumbs for the kids. I thought about, in the last few years, the Washington Redskins changed their name to the Commanders, and the Cleveland Indians changed their name to the Guardians. And Redskins seems a lot worse than Indians, but I guess Indians is still bad. I just don't know. But you know what I mean? But it's still an insult, even if it's not like the worst insult that you could come up with. He's telling her, in a sense, you are less than. You are not worthy, or not as worthy as the Israelites. This is Jesus. And he's not dancing around it. He's making it plain. I thought about this. If this were me, I would totally dance. You know what I mean? Like, I might tell her that, but I would totally dance around it. And you guys get me dancing, and I'm sure you think every week. Would you just get to the point? One of the things I've learned about myself over the years is, because you guys have told me, and you've danced, you haven't told me this directly, but you've danced around it, that if we're in kind of a tricky conversation and I'm searching for the right words, what am I going to do? Yes, I'm going to pause for an awkwardly long time, a very long time. Thank you, Katie. And this is one of the people I've learned it from. But I will, because I'm just trying to find a polite way to say it. And so that's what I would have done. I've been like, oh, your daughter. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's so hard. He blows right by that. In Matthew's version of this, the woman comes and says, help my daughter. Jesus ignores, he doesn't say a word to her. She keeps talking. The disciples are like, hey, are you going to do something? If you're not, could you just send her away because we're tired of her talking? He just ignores her. Jesus, you know? I'd be like, yeah, so we can help, but the timing is tricky. This is going to be hard for you to understand since you're not Jewish. But there was this guy in the Old Testament named Abraham, and I said I'd bless his family, and then I would bless all the families in the earth, and you're not part of the family. You're the other families. You're still family, but like the other families, and so we'll get to you. He doesn't do anything. He says, no, I'm not going to give to the dogs what belongs to the children. That's just like a slap in the face. And it's almost like he looks at her like, what you going to do about that, lady? You know? Like he's trying to get her to go away. He's baiting her. He's testing her. How's she going to respond? How would you respond? And it's hard to get us in that situation, but that's why I started where I started, because I'm pretty sure I know how we would respond. You know? You come to Jesus for help. You're polite. You get no compassion, you get a not so veiled insult, and you get a no. You know, we'd be like, fine, Mr. Jerky McJerkface. Like, I knew you weren't that nice. I knew you were too good to be true. I'll go find help someplace else. But she doesn't. He pokes at her to find out what's inside of her. He does it to the Pharisees all the time. You know, that's what he did in the last scene. They're like, why are your disciples washing their hands the way that they're supposed to? And this is what Jesus says to them in the last scene. He says, well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it's written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching his doctrines, the commandments of men. You leave the commandment of God and you hold to the tradition of men. That is a world-class insult of the Pharisees, to take their own scriptures and use them against them and say, you are the hypocrites that God told Isaiah to talk about. And they are so mad. They're so insulted. You know what they're going to do? They're going to kill him. That's how mad they are. That's the normal response to an insult. This lady says, yeah, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. She doesn't seem insulted. She doesn't seem bitter. She doesn't take a second to swallow her pride. She almost seems confident, like she knows something that everybody else doesn't. Like a little bit of me wonders if she says, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs, and winked at him. And Jesus is like, did you see that? She winked at me. She totally gets it. Jesus says, for this statement, you may go your way. The demons left your daughter. And she went home and found the child lying in the bed and the demon gone. In Matthew's account of this, Jesus says, oh, woman, great is your faith. Like, way to go. You got it. You get it better than all these Israelites. Let it be done for you as you desire. And her daughter was healed instantly. It is the story, like backing out from the sick daughter and just saying you're in a crisis, is a clinic on how to approach Jesus. And it really teaches us some deep things and like provides us like a kind of a test, a litmus test to see some things about what's going on. I talk about grace upon grace upon grace, and we start off with like a second grade education in grace when we come to understand what Jesus has done for us and our need for it for our salvation. And then you got to move through, and he's got you on a PhD track. This is going to help you figure out a little bit of where you are. And so here's the first thing. Like, she understood the depth of her need. She had no questions about the depth of our need, and we have to understand the depth of our need. She had a real problem with her daughter. It was the only thing that really mattered in her life. The Pharisees kind of had a manufactured problem. Like, it was kind of a problem, but he's like, this is not your real problem. You have a much bigger problem. And they refused to see the real problem, and they kept the manufactured problem because that was one that they could do something about. Her crisis let her see things very clearly. And this is on a couple levels. When we talk about, these are the church words, your justification, your sanctification. Your justification is when you're made right with God. You're justified before God, not because of what you've done, but because of what he's done for you. There's a moment where you accept what he's done for you, and you confess Jesus is Lord, and that's all wrapped up in that. And that is your biggest problem, is being made right with God. Being made more like Christ is your sanctification, and is also a problem because sin has consequences for everybody, right? Those are our crises. Sin is a crisis. This lady meets Jesus on Jesus' terms. And her situation helps her to do that, but we have to meet Jesus on Jesus' terms. Sin is a crisis. A crisis. When he says this passage in the last passage, when he says what comes out of a person is what defiles him, for from within, this is one of the most penetrating passages in the Gospels, in the Bible, out of the heart of man. Evil thoughts. Do you ever just think stuff and be like, who am I? Anybody? Or is it just the pastor? Pretty regularly. Like, what is that? And then he kind of lays it out. Sexual immorality, theft, murder. And remember, like earlier, the Sermon on the Mount, anger is what leads to murder. So anger is really the root of that problem, and it's a crisis. Lust is the root of adultery, and so it's a crisis. Coveting. Our economy works on coveting. Coveting, we're trained to covet stuff all day long. And that's a crisis. Wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander. It feels really good to talk junk about other people and make us feel good about ourselves. Like, we do that in subtle ways all the time. Crisis. Pride. Foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they're what defile a person. This is your problem. And we can be like, well, it's not that big of a deal. Everybody has that. Or because these things kind of stay within us. Sometimes you have a crisis in you that becomes a crisis outside of you, and then it's a crisis. And some of those people understand the gospel the best because they have to, because everything's on edge. For many of us, like, those are crises on the inside that we kind of tamp down, and we worry about stuff like washing our hands, and we miss the real problem. You meet Jesus on Jesus' terms. You understand the depth of your need and agree with him about it. She knew that she had no capacity to fix the problem. And this is what's hard for us. The insult is almost like a test of your self-righteousness, like a test of humility. And not just humility, but just reality. Like, do you agree with him that this is not something you can fix, but he has to fix it for you? If you come to Jesus and say, all right, I got this thing, it's coming out of me, I agree it's a crisis, there's nothing I can do about it. I see that I can't see how it's like affecting my relationships and, keeping me from what's possible and all these things. And Jesus says, wait your turn, dog. And not like dog, like we say dog, but like insult dog. I don't know what the word would be for us, In a way saying, you're not worthy. Or like, this is not on your terms. I'll get to it when I want to get to it. Now, we're made with inherent dignity. We're made in the image of God, but God does not owe us our salvation. That is the gospel. And so if he says to us, and this, like, if we can feel the sting of this insult in some way, that's the sting of the gospel. It leaves you a little bit of insecure because this is not up to you, because you are not in control of the situation. Jesus is in control of the situation. And that's where the whole thing pushes you. And the lady knew this. She had no place, she had a crisis, she had no place else to go. The Pharisees did not get this. They thought they had a crisis, they didn't agree with what their real crisis was, and they thought they could fix their fake crisis, and Jesus couldn't. And that's because it was their self-righteousness, like, I can fix this problem, which is our self-righteousness, not the righteousness that God gives us, but we think that we are righteous, and that is the thing that has to be squeezed out of us. We tend to think, I'm not that bad. You know, look at me, I'm in church, I've got my act together. There's a way of thinking about this, like there's religion, there's irreligion, and then there's the gospel. And so religion is like, tends to be our own manufactured self-righteousness. Irreligious people don't really care about righteousness at all. And then there's the gospel, which is the righteousness of Christ applied to us. And a lot of times, irreligious people are closer to the gospel than religious people, because as religious people, we have to get over ourselves more than irreligious people do. And that's what's happening in this passage. The religious people, the Pharisees, who tend to be in church today, we all got it in us, are the ones that have a harder time getting to Jesus than the irreligious Syrophoenician woman. I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I was reading in just my reading. I've been going through Luke, and there's a story where they're going through the grain fields, and his disciples pluck some grain and eat it on the Sabbath. And that's a problem for the Pharisees because you can't work on the Sabbath, and plucking grain is working. And so they call him on it, and he recounts the story. Does anybody remember this where he says, don't you remember David when he doesn't have any bread for his guys, and so he goes and eats the bread of the presence, which was in the tabernacle, in the holy place. Like, it's consecrated bread. Only the priest can eat it. It's like sacred stuff. And so David rolls up to Ahimelech as the high priest or the priest, and he's like, hey, my guys are hungry. I need some bread. He's like, all I got is the bread of the presence. Sorry, I can't help you. He's like, no, we'll take that. He's like, well, you can't take that. It's for the priest. And he lies to him and says, we're on a special mission from King Saul when he's running from King Saul. And Saul's not a good guy, so I think that was okay, but I'm not sure. And they eat the bread of the presence, which they're not supposed to eat. And I'm reading this thing in Luke, and I realize, even though Jesus said it was okay that he ate the bread of the presence, it still bothers me that he ate the bread of the presence. Does anybody else understand that at all? Like, that's my own self-righteousness of like, oh, what Jesus said is okay still bothers Jeff. like he's just showing me a mirror and saying, you Pharisee, you would be mad about the washing your hands, wouldn't you? I was like, I probably would be wet. Like, he's still got to squeeze it out of us. And that's where this passage has the chance to take you, of like showing you your own self-righteousness, in contrast to this woman who totally gets it. And she's like, I got this problem, it's real, I can't fix it. Jesus is like, good, glad we're on the same page, you know. And for us, it'd be like, I'll fix it when I feel like it. We're like, that's not nice, Jesus, you're supposed to be nice. But she gets that she's not in control. And because she knows she's not in control, and it's not about her righteousness, the only thing she can do is appeal to his righteousness. And that's what she does. Yeah, I know I'm not worthy, whatever, that's fine, but you're good. Even the dogs will get the crumbs, right? And he knows that she totally gets it. She was completely confident that Jesus could fix the problem, and that he would fix the problem, that he was able and that he was good. And if we can take our eyes off of ourselves, then we put our eyes on him, and that puts us in a much better place. And that's what she does. That's the beauty of the story. She comes to Jesus on Jesus' terms, not her terms. She agrees with Jesus that she has a real problem. She agrees she doesn't have the capacity to fix it, and that he doesn't owe her anything, but she has faith that he is good and he is able. And that's how you come to Jesus, with everything, with the big and with the little. Keller called this, he referred to it as rightless assertiveness. Like, she's assertive, but normally we are assertive because of our rights. You can't take away my right to cheer for my kid. Like, you can't cut me off. We assert our rights. She has no rights. She understands it, but she is assertive on the basis of God's goodness. And that's like a flip, man. When you get to that place, you are in a good place. You are on your way, on the PhD track of understanding grace. He had a line in this chapter. He said, on the one hand, she's not too proud to accept what the gospel says about her unworthiness. She accepts his challenge. She doesn't get her back up and say, how dare you use a racial epithet about me? I don't have to stand for this. But on the other hand, neither does this woman insult God by being too discouraged to take up his offer. See, there are two ways to fail to let Jesus be our Savior. One is by being too proud, having a superiority complex, not to accept his challenge. But the other is through an inferiority complex, being so self-absorbed that you say, I'm just so awful that God couldn't love me. That is not to accept his offer. And she rides in the middle of that and accepts it, but on the basis of who he is and not on the basis of who he is. C.S. Lewis has a line. He says, this is what humility is. A humble person does not think less of themselves. They don't think, oh, I'm just so bad, woe is me. They think of themselves less because they realize it's not about them. This story is great news for us because what it gives us the freedom to do is just not worry about our righteousness or unrighteousness or whether we're worthy or whether we're not worthy, because that's not what it's about. It's about the goodness of Jesus. And to whatever extent we're like, and we talk a lot about this, like getting wound up in shame and guilt, and I can do this. And then lately, I feel like God has been telling me this, like, Jeff, you're just missing like the goodness of just being in my presence, because you're too wound up in whether you've done the right or wrong thing. And it really doesn't matter. Like in grace, it doesn't matter, because it's about what I've done for you and am doing and will do. And this is about me and not about you. I don't know. I started thinking about I don't know what it is for you that would be the oppressed daughter in this situation, like the crisis that you're not, either you are recognizing or aren't recognizing. It could be big. Honestly, you could be here and feel like, I'm not sure if I'm right with the Lord. Like, hey, I said this a couple weeks ago because it was in context of having heart surgery, and what that did for me is realize, it made me face my mortality. We're all dying. Unless Jesus comes back, the lights are going out at some point. We're going to meet our Maker. And you don't need to be nervous about that, because that's the whole point of this book, is you don't need to be nervous about that, because he has done something for you that you could never do for yourself, and he did it for you because he loves you, and he is good. And you just come to him and say, hey, I realize he did something for me that I can't do for myself, and that's the basis on which I have to come to you, and Jesus is Lord, and that problem is solved, And then he's going to take you through this process of just working through all the stuff in your life and whatever it is that he's brought to you. And it could be internal, like a crisis, a sin. You're like, man, that is a big problem, but I just don't know what to do about it. I'm powerless to do anything about it. He's probably like, good, now we're getting someplace, because he's powerful and he's able and he's good. But that's how you bring it to him. And what that gives us the freedom to do is just lean into his goodness. Father, thanks for this story and this woman and the surprise of this passage. And I still can't believe that you talked to her that way. And I've been just stuck in this for a couple weeks, Lord. And I pray that you would apply that to our souls in the ways that it needs to be applied, Lord. Not as an insult, but this just isn't about us. It's about you and who you are. And for each of us, there is some crisis in our lives that either we are well aware of or one that we are denying and trying to wash our hands away from it, Lord. I pray that you would help us to come to grips with it. And it might be something that's huge that we just can't face because it's so big. Or we can't get ourselves to be sad over it because we would be so sad that this is a reality that we're facing right now. And sin is a crisis and manifests itself in so many ways, Lord. And we can get all tied up in whether we're worthy or not, or whether we've done enough stuff that you would help us, which is totally not the point, or what all that means, God. When what the gospel tells us is that you are just good, and you are able, and the cross tells us you are willing to solve our biggest crisis, and so you are willing to solve all our little crises, Lord. And so I pray that we would come to you in the freedom of the gospel and lean into your goodness and rest into your power, Lord, and know that you are for us and that you love us. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.